When I was 7 years old, I wrote my first computer program. What I had done was I wrote a very short, three, four, 5 line program, probably, to calculate the sum of all the numbers from 1 to 100. I knew what the answer was. It was 5050, and I wanted to see if I could program it correctly. Lo and behold, when I ran the program, it said zero. I was so disappointed. I went downstairs to have dinner with the rest of my family, but I was so disappointed. I all I wanted to do was put my head on the table, and my mom thought that I had gotten into some kind of trouble at school or something like that. And after dinner, I went back to the table to go back to the computer room to look more carefully at the program, and I discovered that I had made a mistake. I printed out the wrong variable at the end of the program. And when I fixed that, I got the right answer. It was 5050. And I was so pleased. I went to my bedroom to jump on my bed. And when I did that, I broke a spring in the mattress. I was some 16 years old when I started to eat healthier. What had happened was I had a huge crush on one of my classmates. I was going to college part time. Had a huge crush on one of my classmates. She looks like, I want to say she's similar to Kelly Clarkson. And but I was very overweight at the time. I needed to lose some weight before I go up to approach her. I was taking a class on compiler design. This was in the fall of 2003, and I made it a goal that I would lose some weight before the end of that semester and go up to talk to her around Christmas time. I went home and I used to drink 2 liters of soda a day, and I gave it up overnight. And it turns out the girl who looked like Kelly Clarkson, I never really got to make much of a move on. Instead, I met a younger version of Mary Curry, and never really did anything with her either. But I had a lot of good conversations with her on the campus, and we went to a couple of events on the campus. And so it was a good segue into. After that, I started to actually pay attention to girls from all around the world. I used to think that only Americans like Kelly Clarkson were worthy of my attention, and so I cleaned up my diet and I paid attention to girls from all around the world. And quite frankly, some of the best relationships I've had were with girls from other parts of the world. So that was good. I moved out of my family's home when I was 21 years old. I distinctly remember my first drive to Rochester, New York. I was excited and I wanted to celebrate, so I packed a 24 pack of non-alcoholic beer in the car and to celebrate. And by the time I got to Rochester, I needed to pee really badly. Actually, before I got there, the first time I saw the sign Rochester, and then it said like 60 some number of miles, and that memory is just seared into my head that I'm finally going to be arriving home. It felt like I was going home. And then I got to the campus at RAT, and I needed to urinate so badly I made a mess in the toilet. And I did really well at RAT, and I obviously graduated with my degree. So ever since then, it's become a good luck charm to every time before I start a new job, before any sort of start, right? My first date with a girl, I make sure to drink a lot of fluids going into it and make sure I have to urinate really badly, right? So the first time I ever went to my girlfriend's home, I made sure to drink a whole 6 pack of non-alcoholic beer while holding in my urine, and then I ran into her bathroom and I just whizzed away, right? That's become a symbol of good luck for some reason. Oh, the maybe the first time I've dated girls who had weird fantasies where we urinated on each other, right? Maybe I'll make sure to have a really good bladder full of urine, go into the shower, and we can urinate on each other. I don't think any of the girls that I'm seeing right now would do that with me, but I've met a few like that. In 2010, on June 13th, I had just ended a really toxic relationship with a girl. And on June 13, 2010, there was a coin show that I wanted to go to. And I didn't have a girl to take to that coin show. And I went all alone. And I had the best time in my life. And I had such a good time that June 13th has become like an anniversary day for me. This year is going to mark 15 years, if you can believe it. Now, I was just about to celebrate the 1 year anniversary in 2011 when I was at a conference in Boston. And another cousin of Mary Curry had she actually started the conversation with me that time. What had happened was I noticed her as I was coming into the conference room, and I was thinking about, I was brainstorming, what am I going to do to make sure she sits down next to me the following day? And so the following day, I got to the conference hall really early to scope out the conference hall. And I sat in the very back of that conference hall, hoping that when she comes in, I would go out the back door, come in through the front door, and sit next to her. And I'm sitting there watching everybody come in, and I saw her, and she walked toward the back of the conference room. I said, "Uh-oh, my cover is blown." But instead, she sits down right next to me. And unfortunately, we knew each other for 4 years, but then I discovered she wanted children. Actually, what's really sad is that I was in Poland in 2017, and we met up again. And that was the last time I ever saw her. I was at the train station when I saw her. Actually, a lot of my relationships end up in train stations. I'll tell you. I'll talk about another one later on. And we had a disagreement because she wanted children and she was asking about my future and all that. I never saw her again, but I did see that I saw the train station again on the news in 2022. The Ukrainian refugees were fleeing, and at the train station, a lot of Polish families had left baby strollers at the train tracks for the Ukrainian refugees, and it reminded me of my ex-girlfriend wanting children and how I left her because of that, right at that very train station. And it really hit me hard. That's why I talk about the war in Ukraine so much, because that was my first image of it. I won my first gold medal at the Computer Olympiad in 2016, and I still distinctly remember my name being announced to go collect the prize. In 2020, I we were told to stay home for 2 weeks, and I thought that I would write the number one AI for backgammon um, in 2 weeks, and I did. Within the 2 weeks, I already had a pretty good version of it, but then we had to lock up for another 6 months, and I wrote probably the best version of backgammon ever. Right? It's been 4 years, and still nobody has beaten me at it at the Computer Olympiad. In 2022, I was tutoring an AP chemistry student. He had this fancy periodic table that showed how rare every element on the periodic table is. And I discovered from his table, his really fancy table, that bismuth is almost as rare as gold, but a few thousand times cheaper. And so I went home and I bought a 10-pound bismuth bar. And a couple weeks later, I just decided that I needed to make some crystals out of it. And I guess the rest is history. I still distinctly remember receiving the bar. I still distinctly remember melting it down the first time. And I made a disaster of that first melt, actually. And a lot of that bismuth became slag. And then I had to recover it. I figured out how to turn that slag back into bismuth. And I still have the very first crystal that I made, even though it was a disaster of one. I kept it anyway. And then 3 weeks ago, I was in Taiwan for my grandmother's funeral, and for some bizarre reason, I decided to reactivate my old dating profile. But these days, your dating profile checks where you are with your IP address, and so it was in Taiwan, and I decided to use it anyway. And long story short, before I knew it, I was having sushi with a girl in Nangang, and I it was my second to last day in Taiwan. We got on the subway for her to go home and for me to go back to my hotel in Tomsui. And when she got off the subway in Taipei main station, I looked out the window and watched her walk away, and it was like watching a part of my body disappear into the crowd. It really did feel like that. Give you an idea of how much I know her. She was involved in this dance. They were all dressed up. You couldn't see their faces. And even then, I could guess which one was her. I could just notice the posture and the curvature of her body, and from only seeing her for less than 3 hours in one evening, and that's how close a connection I got. Anyway, so these memories are just seared into my head, and I'll never be able to forget any of these memories. This is the Peter Dislike Show.